Folks, we've got a new Big Ten. So welcome USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. We consider this now 2024, of course. We forget about all those other sports. It's football time here at the Voice of College Football. So the four from the Pac-12, you are fully entrenched here in the Big Ten. So since we've got a new Big Ten, why not a all-new Big Ten live show right here at the Voice of College Football coming your way each and every Friday night. So mark it down, lock it in. We're going to be here every Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern time and joined by media members across the 18-member Big Ten and taking your phone calls as well. Tim Prangley's here to rep the old Pac-12, and of course, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. So we are going to ask you, Tim, to rep some of your rivals as well. How you doing tonight?
Doing good. It's Friday, right?
It's Friday.
Sober. It's Friday. We can all relax, enjoy the weekend, and talk some Big Ten football.
Absolutely. So I have to continually, every day, remind myself and adjust my thinking. Like I check the transfer portal about 3 times a day. I check the commitment list on 247 Sports, and every time I see Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, I got to train myself. Okay, this is just as important for our Big Ten live show. So Tim and I are excited about this because we're going to take your calls. You see the phone line on the ticker down below. It's 888-997-4539. So many of you folks have grown accustomed, of course, to calling shows the traditional way. So we want to make that available to you. And we're excited about that. 888-997-4539. And we are hoping to have Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm jump on a little bit later to talk Iowa football and the hopes of Hawkeye Nation in bringing back home a 5-star offensive tackle in Kaden Proctor, who has entered the transfer portal after he dissed Iowa after committing to the Hawkeyes as one of the prized recruits across college football just a year ago, going to Alabama, having some struggles up front for the Alabama Crimson Tide, but certainly good enough to start at left tackle for the Tide and really gained some maturity and learned his position much better in the latter portion of the season. But he is one of the many to leave Tuscaloosa, and so he is on the open market, and Iowa is hoping to get him. And I'm also hearing rumblings that Ohio State is a main pursuer of Kaden Proctor as well. We also had a big week in Columbus. I guess we can start right there. I'm going to play the homer, I guess. Ross Bjork, the new athletic director at The Ohio State, and he was very adamant, very particular and specific about making sure that he didn't screw that up. He was very conscious of delivering the Ohio State. He must have said that about 47 times during his introductory news conference, but he was very, very conscious of that he had to state, not Ohio State, the Ohio State, but he dropped the pronunciation guide, though, on the game. He didn't quite get that. He kept calling it the game. And I guess technically he got it. But it was an interesting first meeting with the media for Ross Bjork, the new Ohio State AD. They've only had 9 in the history of the school, so he is only the 9th. Gene Smith has been there for a long, long time. And comes in from Texas A&M, and then previous to that, Ole Miss from 2012 to 2019. And so 2 of the big hot topic issues during his tenure at those 2 schools were the Hugh Freeze debacle that involved recruiting and then personal issues. And so he was questioned about that, his handling of the Hugh Freeze situation at Ole Miss, which I don't think is much of a controversy since they certainly jumped on that and were fully transparent to the NCAA when that happened and took care of business by all accounts, as opposed to the Jimbo Fisher situation where that was more not an ethical issue, just strategic or common sense situation that can be questioned of you've hired this coach and you're paying him more money than any coach in college football. He's been here now for 4 or 5 years and he hasn't delivered yet, and you're giving him an extension. And then here we are 2 or 3 years later, just 2 or 3 years after that extension. I think it was in 2021. And Jimbo Fisher then receives the largest buyout in the history of, I think, in the history of sports. The largest buyout, 3 times larger than any buyout that we've ever seen in college football. And so Ross Bjork had to answer to that. And he answered in a very politically correct way. But I think if you read between the lines, he was very much depicting a situation where the boosters and the administration were telling me he gets a contract extension because if not, Ed Orgeron just got fired at LSU and we're going to lose our football coach. So we still want him. Therefore, you are going to execute this contract extension. And that was the word that he kept using. I executed the contract extension. So very much Ross Bjork embraces the challenge at Ohio State, understands that there are championship expectations among all the 36 sports. So it's the largest athletic department in the country in regards to both money and in total sports, 36 sports. It's just a massive athletic department, but he made no mistake about it. He clearly stated football's king here. All the sports are important, but football is king. And we know we've got to beat that team up north. And he needed clarification on that. Is it the team up north, the school up north? And it was certainly, I'm not much in for introductory news conferences. Don't always make sure that I catch those, but I did with him. And also discussed with Pat Murphy from Bucknuts 247 Sports. So that video just dropped here on the main channel with Pat Murphy, Bucknuts 247 Sports. So he had some great insight into that. And also, Bill O'Brien has now been officially named. It was out there for about a day and confirmed, but became official early this afternoon. Bill O'Brien, former Penn State head coach, former Houston Texans head coach, most recently at Alabama, offensive coordinator during the season in which Bryce Young won the Heisman Trophy, and then also with the New England Patriots this past year. He has been named the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. So big move by the Buckeyes there. And I think a lot of people are questioning because of Brian Hartline being a rising star. And just 1 year ago, they upgraded his title to co-offensive coordinator. And then also the thought process that they would work Brian Hartline into the play calling mix. What this says about Brian Hartline, is this a slight to him in any way? And I think that they're just in a situation where they can't put that kind of responsibility on somebody who has yet to be in the mix. I think they're going to bring him along, Brian Hartline. He may be eventually the new head coach in waiting. But that is an interesting dynamic because they certainly went to great lengths this time last year to make Brian Hartline look the part and reward him for his recruiting prowess and what he's done at the wide receiver position as wide receivers coach. But now they bring in somebody to call the plays, take that off Ryan Day's plate. There's just too much going on for college football coaches, I believe. I don't know how many are still out there. Tim, of course, you've got one guy there in Lincoln Riley, who is one of the few left that takes on one side of the ball. How much help does Lincoln Riley get on that side of the ball?
I'm sure there are guys, that are in his ear on his headset. Cliff Kingsbury was there. I'm sure he's there in between plays, but he's on the sidelines with him. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly how much input he gets from the other, but there are people up. They do have people up in the press box looking down. So he's definitely getting information. As far as the play calling itself, I don't know what percentages are Lincoln Riley. I would assume most, because that's the thing. When you have someone whose strength is, Lincoln Riley, which play calling is his thing, or like a Kiffin, you take something you do really great and you hand it over to somebody else. I know you want to be the head coach and the CEO, but at the same time, you're taking away what your biggest advantage is as a coach and giving it to someone. So I don't know the exact percentage, but I would assume it's very little. Most of it is probably him.
I would guess with the offensive production under Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, since he made his way to Los Angeles, that there would be few critics. However, is there any school of thought out there that maybe that's too much for a modern college football head coach to take on?
I've yet to hear anything about it. One thing we know so far, USC's defense has sucked, but there's been nothing wrong with USC's offense. It's usually top two, top two, top three in the country. So it's probably not going to ask him to take away his play calling when the offense is running as well as it is. I will say also there haven't been really any major like clock management gaffes. The only issues they're having really, and you see it a lot of, USC is not the only one, is how people start playing that game with the play clock, where if you substitute, let's say you bring in, extra receiver, right, for the set, then they get to take their times, roll their slowest guy, the nose tackle off, and the nose tackle bumble back onto the field, and you got to call a timeout because the play clock's running down. Other than that, there haven't been any major coaching, or you usually see a lot of times where coaches get a little overwhelmed and their clock management becomes an issue. You really haven't seen that yet. I'm sure that would be if it did happen, though.
A couple other notes on Ohio State, and then we'll talk some USC football again. So Bill O'Brien, new offensive coordinator. I think that that's a really good move just from the standpoint. And I didn't do any kind of analysis in terms of, okay, as I've done in the past, okay, let's go to his former stops. And what I typically like to do, if there's enough of a track record, is say, okay, what did this side of the football look like prior to this coordinator's arrival? And then what did they produce when he was there? And then what did it look like after he left? And then, of course, you got to take some things into consideration, like personnel changes. Of course, there are personnel changes. So there might have been one reason to believe that he succeeded only because they really went for it during that time. But I have not done that with Bill O'Brien. Of course, he was with the Houston Texans. What got him the job was how he handled Penn State, and that he is an offensive mind. Again, was the offensive coordinator for a team that came within 4 to 5 minutes of winning a national championship at Alabama with Bryce Young at quarterback, even though the wide receiver play was down that year. I think what he did at Penn State from an overall standpoint of leading the program was pretty remarkable through the outset or the conclusion of the Sandusky scandal. And Bill Belichick's going to hire him and Nick Saban's going to hire him, then I think that's a good move for Ohio State. And again, there's just this thought, and it's pretty easy to see that Ohio State is gunning for 2024. They were able to secure and retain so much talent that was completely unexpected to come back for maybe two basic reasons. One would be that those guys underachieved and did not have the 2023 season that they anticipated to launch them into a good draft position. And then number two, flat out NIL. Ohio State stepped up, delivered to 8 or 9 players to keep them, and then have gone out and gotten Quinshon Judkins, one of the best running backs in the nation at Ole Miss. Will Howard, we'll see how he turns out. I don't think he's a top shelf, top level elite quarterback, but he's really good. And with the right pieces in place, which they have, he could be extremely successful if they let him be Will Howard, meaning let him move, let him run, don't tie him down, let him cut him loose. Justin Fields has made some comments since being in the NFL that was the command from Ryan Day, was not to run and I get it. Let's be wise, but you got to let Will Howard be Will Howard. And one other note before we get to USC is Caleb Downs is out there. So this is the guy that's rated as, between he and Caden Proctor, not just the two top transfer portal players available right now, the top two, period, including all the guys that have signed, all those quarterbacks, all those. Walter Nolan was number one in going to Ole Miss from Texas A&M. But this is the guy, Caleb Downs, 107 tackles last year, 2 picks, 4 passes defense, just an outstanding player. Came within him by about the instep of his cleat of intercepting the first pass of the Rose Bowl as he was out of bounds, came back in, established himself, but not quite, and intercepted J.J. McCarthy in the first play of the game. But that was called back, and rightfully so. So Caleb Downs is out there, and I'm hearing a lot of Georgia and a lot of Ohio State there. But Tim, getting to USC, I guess the latest news is Romello Height, defensive lineman. Of course, he was a 4-star. I think he originally went, did he go Georgia, Auburn, USC, or vice versa?
No, I think he was just out of high school.
Out of Georgia.
He's from Georgia.
Gotcha.
So he's like the 2A player of the year in Georgia. He was recruited and signed with Auburn. Then came to USC after his redshirt freshman year. And unfortunately, he didn't get a lot of play until he got in the second game. He got hurt against Stanford. Shoulder injury took him out for the rest of the 22 season. Came back to 23 season, hoping to have a lot from him. He was a starter to start out with, but in the first 2 games of his career. But when he came back, he was more of a role player. He had a pretty good game against ASU where he had 5 tackles, 2 sacks, and a fumble recovery, I think. But there was only one other game where he tallied 3 tackles in an entire game. So unfortunately, although he's a fan favorite and he looked like a flash, he brings some physicality and speed to the outside, the edge defense. He just never really materialized and took that next step forward. But I do wish him the best.
And then the really big news came a few days ago with Los Angeles Rams defensive line coach Eric Henderson coming over as D-line coach, and then also co-defensive coordinator to take over and work with D'Anton Lynn. So your thoughts about Henderson?
Just one more piece to add. So the knock on D'Anton Lynn, going back to that, to USC's new OC, he's a hot name in the coaching, NFL coaching, came highly recommended by John Harbaugh, but he's young and he's only had, as a DC, he doesn't have a lot of experience. So when you're looking at that's his one knock, is he doesn't have a lot of experience. But you start bringing in guys like, obviously Henderson's not an old guy, but he's 42 years old, so he's a little more seasoned. And then you have Matt Entz coming over at linebacker, the head coach from FCS level. They're adding the pieces and strength. But the biggest thing that I'm excited about is, it's kind of hard. I can't remember who said it, but someone said, imagine a scenario last year, right, where you have you're sitting there and you have Sean Nua and we come into your room to recruit a defensive lineman, and you have Grinch and Nua sitting there saying, "Hey, come, we'll get you the NFL." That's kind of a hard sell, because if you're going back to what you had over Grinch's career, there's not a lot of talent going to the NFL. But then you bring in a guy like Henderson, who, by the way, days after he came to USC, there was he set out a tweet of him and holding his arm with a guy in a USC t-shirt. And the best part about it is Aaron Donald's that guy in the t-shirt. And so this is the star power that USC is going to start selling. He developed, Donald's a Hall of Famer, and he will be with or without Henderson. But he said that he was a big reason why he would come to the voluntary practices before, training camps, because he wanted to get the training from Henderson. I mean, these are direct quotes before he became to USC. So I'm thinking that the big name at Henderson is going to start helping USC to get some of those high 4-star, 5-star inside defensive linemen that have so been missed the last 5 to 7 years from USC's roster. We used to get them, guys. I mean, we go down a list of guys that played in the NFL for USC, going back to when Pete Carroll first got there. His biggest one he got was Sean Cody, which really stole Sean Cody from he was going to Notre Dame, 100% going to Notre Dame. But Coach Ed Ogeron got him to stay, and that was the beginning of it. Then you got guys like Cedric Ellis, Big Mike Patterson. Most recently, we got Stevie T to come over from Utah. So we have a history of getting big linemen into the NFL. Antoine Woods played for the Cowboys, right? So USC now has that cachet to walk into living rooms and say, "Hey guys, if you want to get the NFL, come check us out. We'll get you there."
Correct me if I'm wrong. If we looked at the Clay Helton recruiting years, first of all, we would see really, really highly ranked classes, except for like 2 years, they just cratered.
Yeah.
They just cratered to like 50 out of nowhere. But the other ones are like in the top 10, and they're running back, wide receiver, DB heavy.
Corner, safety, all skill positions. Yeah. But, and also, offensive line, believe it or not, fairly decent on the offensive line. There were some late decommits and some guys leaving, but they were still landing top linemen as well, offensive linemen. The issue, but then became, we got into the 1920 season, then it really dried up all the way across the board. But they were getting the skill position even to the very end. But that defensive line, and also then later on the tackle position, offensive tackle position for USC, just completely dried up. And that's what you're seeing. It all starts in the trenches. And that's why you saw USC, people calling USC soft, people shoving USC around, running all over the ball on them, pass rushing in the backfield more than our running backs are. That's what happens when you don't recruit those lines the way they should be recruited.
Folks, we are so excited about our new Big Ten Live show. So this is going to be a regular deal. Friday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time with all of you. You see the call-in line there, 888-997-4539. So here's the Big Ten lineup throughout the week. And we will show this graphically at some point, maybe not tonight, but we will do a better job of that. So we've got an Ohio State show. So we've talked Buckeyes here, big week at Ohio State. That's on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That's over on the Ohio State channel. We've got a Michigan show with John D'Adamo hosting. That's on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Iowa, and we've got Corey Bratta, who is hopefully joining us tonight for a discussion on the Hawkeyes, but Corey and I get together on Tuesday nights at 5:30 Eastern. That's on the Iowa channel. We've got a Nebraska show with our guy Justin Adams and myself, and that's at 7 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday night. We've got an Oregon show with Exploring with Ben, Spaz, that crew. That's Tuesday night at 10:30 Eastern, or 7:30 Pacific, of course, for Oregon fans. And then you got Tim, you've got Matt Zemek, Tim and Matt, both at Trojans Wire, folks. Trojans Wire, check it out on a regular basis with Tim and Matt. And then the three of us get together for Trojan Conquest Live. Have a great time with all of you. Monday nights at 8 Pacific time, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific on Mondays. We got two Big Ten Live shows. So we got this one. We're coming at you on Friday nights, but John is still going to be hosting on Monday nights at 8 o'clock. The Big Ten Ocho, 8 o'clock Eastern on Monday nights with John D'Adamo.
Well, Mark, I'll just tell you right now, we had one phone call earlier. They didn't want to hang around. But other than that, we're wide open for phone calls. So you guys, I know you're used to calling in on StreamYard, but we're going to be taking phone calls. Just try to open it up to everybody. Feel free to give us a call, 888-997-4539. You call now, you'll be in right away talking to Mark.
And absolutely. One of the reasons we're doing that, folks, is because we understand from a technology standpoint, this is much easier for some people, and we've experimented with it and determined that, hey, we need a little bit of both. So I have a ton of call-in shows throughout the week and so forth that involve the StreamYard link. But we wanted to make this available for those of you who are more easily able to join the show this way. Lemansky, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Per Corey Bratta, Mr. Proctor expected to attend Saturday's Iowa-Purdue basketball game tomorrow in Iowa City. Go Hawks. So Kaden Proctor making the rounds. Yes.
That would be the answer to you guys on left tackle, though, Mark. You guys could imagine
Oh,
this. Julian Sayin also apparently is in the portal as well.
yeah.
So imagine if somehow Ohio State, you guys got right? You got pretty much everyone coming back, except for Marvin
Harrison Jr. guy.
Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah. You got pretty much everyone coming back. You're able to land, let's just say a Sayin, because you're just talking about and bring him along slowly and have him ready maybe by about, I don't know, maybe beginning of October, and you start kind of bringing maybe some packages, or bringing them in. I'm wondering if that would upset the apple cart, or you're going to ride all the way out with Will Howard.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the question.
Yeah, well, I think that depends on two big things. Number one, Will Howard's performance in games, and what Julian's saying is showing in practice. But I know Ohio State fans are amped up because of all this surge of personnel. Again, the guys that they were able to retain that didn't go to the NFL draft, plus everything else that they're bringing on board. But if they don't correct that offensive line, it's all going to be for naught. There is no way that they can overcome that through the season to make the playoffs. They're that talented, that good. Shoot, they were that good last year. If there was a 12-team playoff, they're like the 5 seed. But to win 3 playoff games with that offensive line performance they had last year, that's not going to happen. And I know Tim is a big proponent of the offensive line, and you got to have those guys. We forget about them. We don't talk about them. We talk about them as a unit a lot. We don't really talk about the individuals that much, and people tend to forget them and forget their names. But I think it's the most important position by and large, generally, on most football teams.
Yeah, you're starting to look at the positions I think that really are important. Obviously, number one is quarterback.
Yes.
And then, when you think that he's the most important position, then just logically it says that you need somebody, especially with the athletic ability of these rush ends these days. The guys on the outside, they're just so damn athletic now. They run as fast as running backs. So you're going to need to protect them. So that just lends the idea that you need to have if you have an elite quarterback, he's gone in one play if you don't take care of him. That's all I'm going to say. So, you guys landing a Caden Proctor, right? That would be a little addition. That if you get that double whammy, that would be something else. I don't know. Lemansky, let us know in the chat or call in. What do you think the likelihood of you guys getting him back is going to be?
And Tim, I'm a little curious because we talked a lot of Will Howard connected to USC 6 weeks ago, let's say. And I think we were under the understanding that was close to a done deal and that was going to happen. Do you know what broke down there, if anything?
The Holiday Bowl?
You really think that was it?
I don't know. I don't know. But Miller Moss came out. So Miller Moss was flat. He had a couple opportunities. USC's defense didn't allow Miller Moss to get any backup time, right? So when he came out in the second half, he played against Colorado. He played against Stanford. He just didn't look that sharp. You got to remember, Will Howard, Mark, wants to start. You know what I mean? This is it for him. He needs to. He does not want to be a backup, and he probably wants to go somewhere where he feels that he's going to be a starter. Is that the only reason? No. I mean, you're talking about one high-powered offense going to another high-powered offense, right? He knows he'll have Hartline's wide receivers to throw to, so he knows he'll have that. He knows that although your offensive line was kind of shaky, USC's offensive line was pretty damn shaky as well last year. I mean, they're bringing it together. I think these young guys, like I've said time and time again, will be better. But there's many reasons why it's not. And Ohio State, with everyone Ohio State is coming back, man, you're talking about got to be favored to win the Big Ten. So I mean, there's a lot of reasons to go to Ohio State. But I do think one big thing that USC has that a lot of schools don't have is they have Lincoln Riley. And all quarterbacks just kind of want to go and see what Lincoln Riley could do for their career, because you go there, you're going to, I guarantee it. I don't care where you are. You're like a 6th round, 7th round draft pick, or if you plan on being a 1st round draft pick, going and getting just Lincoln Riley's name attached to you getting developed for a year is going to improve your draft stock. So there are a number of intangibles that we probably go into over and over again, but it's not like USC is way ahead of when it comes to offense. Ohio State, USC is, last couple of years have been right up there at the top. So it's not going to be that much of a situation choosing between one or the other. And again, the receivers that you have over at Ohio State with Hartline just lining up All-American after All-American, I'm sure it's very advantageous to go to Ohio State as well. But yeah, I think that Miller Moss display. I mean, he not only did put it. You said you're going to go look at it again. It wasn't just that he put up huge numbers. He looked smooth back there. He was just. It's like he knew that offense like the back of his hand. And so then Will Howard, you're coming in, and this guy's had 2 years in this offense, and you're coming in the spring to try to unseat him, but stay ahead of him so you could be a starting position. And maybe you have one bad game or two bad games and they start out with LSU. You're looking over your shoulder the whole time. Going to Ohio State, I got to say, with Devin Brown, I mean, I don't think that he's really going to be that worried about being unseated.
No, Devin Brown, Lincoln Keenholz, who came in for Devin Brown after Brown was knocked out about the second series at the Cotton Bowl. And Keenholz, it was almost impossible to evaluate him because he was running for his life. When he was able to set up and hit that back step, that back foot and deliver the ball, I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he looked better than Devin Brown. I think he's a better passing quarterback than Devin Brown. And then the future is Air Noland, but he is going to be a true freshman and is just arriving on campus. So
I forgot about that. Yeah, he's a Elite 11 5-star Air Noland, right? So I mean, maybe you don't need saying. Maybe he's going to be your guy in waiting.
Yes, Trojan Blade certainly backing you up there.
And he would know more than I would.
We had some fun with this one this afternoon as folks, 888-997-4539.
We have a call, Mark.
Very good. We'll take it.
Yeah. All right, caller. Hi, how you doing? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Keith from Michigan.
Keith, how you doing?
Hey, it's good to talk to you again, Mark.
Absolutely. I think I know who this is. Yes, absolutely. You've been calling recently. It's been great having you on the show. What's going on tonight?
Yeah, I was really surprised by Bill O'Brien news. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Ryan Day one of the elite offensive minds in college football these days?
Well, he is certainly considered, yes. He made his way up through the ranks as an offensive mind. Yes, that's his calling card, and that's why he's a head coach right now. His path in that way, at least his most recent path, is pretty similar to Lincoln Riley's in regards to this is why he is where he is because he proved himself at the highest level at a huge school and got this head coaching job. Yep.
Right. And the next thing is they're hiring another elite offensive mind in college football in Bill O'Brien.
Yes.
So hopefully it'll be a productive working relationship and not a conflict relationship.
Well, as long as everyone understands their roles, I don't think so. I think the one big difference in what we're discussing here, and at the point that Ryan Day was elevated from offensive coordinator to take over for Urban Meyer, is it's a different world. There is just so much that's been thrown at these coaches that's different than just 3 to 4 years ago. And that's the transfer portal and NIL. And they do have to deal with it. Now they should have a ton of support, and they do. It's not like they're taking on the NIL, but they have to be involved in understanding of it. And then also just the transfer portal. And Tim and I have discussed it a number of times on the USC show, and Ross Bjork addressed it during his introductory news conference at Ohio State. This December calendar for college football needs to be completely reconstructed, needs to be torn apart. It's ridiculous. And now we've got a 12-team playoff coming. So we're going to have 8 more schools. So we're going to have 12 of the 65 to 70 in the Power 5 that are going to be involved in a college football playoff. So not just it's a meaningless bowl game, which even under those circumstances it's not a meaningless bowl game to a lot of people. And number two, you've got 15 practices that you want to take advantage of and be able to focus on. And you're trying to keep your locker room together. You're recruiting. National Signing Day is in the smack dab in the middle of December. That's insane, trying to prepare for all that and be thinking about 2025 at the same time as you're trying to keep your locker room, as you're looking at. And now just consider, Keith, the scouting responsibility and workload of your staff trying to scout other schools. A head coach in college football would have told you 3 or 4 years ago, because many of them did, basically, I don't know what's going on in the rest of college football. I don't watch other teams. I don't have time. I watch our opponents, and I have to focus on us. Now they've got to go scout the left tackle at Syracuse and the cornerback at Tennessee. They've got to go out there and figure out who's going to be the best fit and who they should pursue in the transfer portal. So their film watching is escalated. You still with us, Keith?
Okay, and then the next question is recruiting, recruiting transfers, and coaching and development is more important on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball? I'll let you guys go with that.
Is recruiting transfers more important on the offensive or the defensive side of the ball? Well, I think it's much more complicated than that. It depends on who you are and what the makeup of your team is.
Well, I would actually say from experience that I've seen, or USC went through last year, I think the one position that I don't think you should rely on, unless it's just like a piece, right? Because USC had a lot of luck pulling in Bobby Haskins for Virginia, one piece to add to an offensive line. I don't think you can rely on the transfer portal recruiting that way in order to bring up your offensive line, and fill in pieces there. That's the closest I can get to you as far as which side of the ball or where. I think that you can bring in, like a rush end or a nose tackle, right? Like look at Bear Alexander. He came in right away and he was an instant force, because although there is communication and defense, maybe in the secondary as well. But I think on the offensive line, playing next to each other all the time, bringing in multiple pieces to that set was disastrous for USC. I think individually the guys were talented, but when they did very well at their previous schools, they were starters, in the SEC, and they played well. But the transfer over to a unit at USC, I think that was one that was a major issue. So that's the closest I could say. Both sides of the ball are pretty equal. It just comes down to what you need, really.
Yeah, there are individual positions that are more complicated to play and more cerebral than other positions. And that starts with quarterback. Then that goes to offensive line, especially the center who makes the line calls. And then that goes to defense with whoever's calling the defense. It's usually a linebacker or a safety calling the defense.
All good points. And USC got it right when he said they're pretty equal. And my understanding, mostly from professionals, but I think it's very true at major college football too, is that a head coach has to be 45% concerned about offense, 45% about defense, and 10% special teams. And when I see a major college football player or even a pro, Sean McVay was walking around with the play calling sheet at the Rams Lions game. So Sean McVay hasn't given that up either. But I think those coaches are at a big disadvantage. And you posed this argument early in discussion, Mark, that is it too much in modern major football for a coach to call the plays? And I would say that based on everything I've seen through the last 30 years of football, I would say that the coaches are moving away from that. Dan Campbell started calling plays in his 3-13 year, and his offense got better. But the first thing he went out to do was he went out to find Ben Johnson, who was as good or better at calling plays than he was, so he could get back to the business of managing the whole team. I'll let you guys go.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate you being here, getting us started. I don't think there's an ironclad rule to hardly anything, which means there are exceptions. There are people that are just that skilled, and maybe they're giving up. And I'm going to just bring up the name Lincoln Riley since we've already talked about him, but I'm not speaking to his exact situation because I'm not knowledgeable enough about the inner workings at USC. But I'm just saying he could be giving up other portions of responsibilities elsewhere to be calling plays. We also know at Ohio State, they fired their special teams coordinator and their safeties coach for pretty much two different reasons. The safety play the last couple of seasons was, I don't want to say exceptional. It's really good, but it was a recruiting issue there, not meeting their standards across the board. And then the special teams have just been lacking, not deplorable, not awful, atrocious, but lacking. And to Keith's point, the special teams are extremely important. However, if you look at the number of plays that are impacted by special teams, that has decreased considerably. Because just think about it. First of all, we got kickoffs. Well, what happened about 10 years ago? They kind of took away the majority of kickoffs. First of all, kickers got so good, they were just kicking the ball out of the end zone, first off. So that reduced the number of returns. Number two, the strategy of obviously catching the football and getting it out to the 25-yard line has taken over a large portion of the kickoff. So, for example, if you would go to college football stats and look up the number of kickoff returns, just go 10 years ago, look at the number of kickoff returns and see how much they have declined. I did that one time and I saw whoever led the nation in kickoff returns, whatever team that was that chose to return the most kickoffs and probably gave up a ton of touchdowns. That's why they had a bad defense and they gave up touchdowns and had kickoffs. They would have been like 80th in the country 10 years ago. So that's been reduced. Number two, these punters are so good. And also with the rugby style punting, which pins teams and is very much accentuating kicks. Number one, where the return or the coverage unit has more time to get down the field because there's too much in the risk reward category that's a negative to rushing the punter. I love watching blocked punts. I think it's one of the most exciting plays in football. I love seeing a blocked punt. However, the risk versus the reward has just almost taken that out of the game. So the return units are backing off, gives the punter all day to survey the field, to do his little running start, kick it. So the coverage unit's down there. The punters have gotten better. The rugby style pins it in. And so you've got less punt returns. Plus, the approach and the mindset on the punt return unit by the coaches have been, we'd rather secure the football. And even though we're not going to get our 8 or 9 yards a crack on average, we'd rather secure the football. So just catch the football. Don't get hurt. And so that has severely reduced the number of special teams plays, those two facets of it. Right, folks, appreciate you being here. Our number is 888-997-4539. This is the new Big Ten Live show. We're here on Fridays at 7 o'clock Eastern Time with you.
Okay, next caller. Hi, caller. Where are you from? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Lomansky, Iowa graduate, stranded in western Wisconsin in 2 feet of snow.
Oh, my word. Now, I will say, Lomansky, that your timing is impeccable because at the exact time that you called, our guy, Corey Bratta, has shown up. So we can throw you both into the conversation at the same time if you'd like.
Yes, invite Corey. He's my brain.
All right,
my.
Corey, what's going on tonight?
What's up, Mark? I apologize for being a little later than I wanted to be here, but I caught you at the tail end. I did not catch any of what Lemansky said. Is he writhing in the lack of an OC hire? Is he celebrating what will be a 5-star offensive lineman committing to Iowa this weekend, or what are we talking about?
It's all yours, Lemansky.
I gave you priority. Corey. I just said hi to my favorite Trojan, and you go ahead and I'll listen, Corey.
What am I talking about? What am I talking about here? Mark, set me up. Throw me some sort of a pitch. Even if it's even if it's a changeup, throw me something.
Lemansky blessed us with a super chat in which he alerted us that per you, Corey Bratta, that Kaden Proctor was going to be attending the Iowa-Purdue basketball game.
That is true. Lemansky's a proud follower of the show. So yeah, Kaden is actually in Iowa City. Just got to Iowa City here in the last hour, and he is planning on being at the Iowa-Purdue basketball game tomorrow. So that's big. And I haven't really shared this on my channel yet, but I expect this to be a done deal by the end of the weekend.
Okay. So Iowa fans get their 5-star just a year later.
Yeah. And I hope Iowa fans, I mean, I know that there's always going to be the people that are kind of live in the past and have a hard time letting go of what happened. I think there's a narrative out there that Kaden Proctor somehow did Iowa dirty. I've never understood that. I reflect on that recruiting class, Mark, and you may recall that same week that Kaden Proctor flipped to Alabama out of high school. What did Iowa do? They flipped a DB from Eastern Illinois the day before signing day. So not that we need to rehash this, but before people start bringing that up, what's the difference? What is the difference between Kaden Proctor flipping from Iowa to Michigan and Iowa willingly flipping a kid from the FCS to Iowa? What is the difference? I'll just answer the question for you. There is no difference.
Yes.
I
was going to answer it to say, in a practical sense, there is no difference, but in a real life sense, people care about the 5-star.
Right. But I'm saying if we're going to, and that's my issue with how people handled that situation, is we want to act holier than thou, and all of a sudden we're up in arms about a kid's morality and his ethics and how could you do this? Give me a break. Like, you can be upset about it and be upset at Nick Saban and whoever lured him to Alabama, whether you want to claim it was the dollar, the bag they offered him, or if it was Nick Saban himself. It doesn't really matter. He made a choice and he had every right to make it. Yes.
If Nick Saban was in my living room at the same time that he was in Proctor's room, I would have sold my house and moved to Alabama and worked for him for free. And that's an Iowa graduate.
Well, what's funny about it is I have this conversation all the time, Mark, man to man here. All right. Man to man. If you were in an 18-year-old's position, and I'm not saying what Alabama offered for him to go there out of high school, but say they said to you, let's not even go 7 figures. Let's just go 6. Let's say they offered you $500,000 to just go there for at least year 1, right? You can't predict the future. Portal window opens. You have the new NIL and immediate eligibility stuff and all that, whatever. But they tell you, hey, give you $500,000. We got $500,000 waiting for you. Come down to Tuscaloosa. Oh, and by the way, you're playing for a Hall of Fame coach, a dynasty, and you're probably going to start on day 1. Seriously? Like, you're really going to say, oh, no, I wouldn't do that. I'm above that. It's just funny, the hypocrisy from people who will never be in that position. So I have a lot of admiration for Kaden Proctor because he made a tough decision, and now he's making another difficult decision. If he burns Iowa tomorrow, which I give basically next to 0% chance of happening, because of the situation currently. If he burns Iowa tomorrow, I'll eat all my words, but that's not going to happen.
Okay, the only thing I'll say to that is, and maybe my perspective comes from being a father. So if my son was in that position, certainly we would have very serious conversations about this, about what's important to him, what should be important to him. Maybe those are two different things. What's important to an 18-year-old versus what should be important to them don't always jive. But what has happened other than Nick Saban leaving Alabama that changes this equation if he can still make a ton of money in either location and Alabama's a better football program?
What changes? What has changed?
Well, Nick Saban's gone.
Right. Nick Saban's gone. So isn't that the main equation?
I
mean,
know.
isn't that a pretty hefty equation? The Hall of Fame
on
coach.
the surface, that's the only difference. But we don't
I've
know
got
if
one for
anything
you
else
guys.
has changed.
I wasn't asked, but I would say this. Maybe it's Brian Ferentz is no longer in charge of the offense, and he's saying, do I want to play in that offense, or do I want to go over and block for the running backs they're going to have over at Alabama? And now maybe that's also changed. Possibly there's a new offensive coordinator coming in for Iowa. So there's a lot to unpack. Maybe he had the foresight to realize that maybe they're going to get, there's no way that Brian was going to survive this season. So I'll go to Alabama, like you said, start from day one, get developed, get my $500K, then come back and play for the home school, and everyone will forgive and forget, and I can go on for the rest of my life.
Maybe he did not enjoy, and I'm not saying this for sure, we're all speculating. Maybe he did not enjoy the University of Alabama or the state of Alabama, or it was just a different culture, different vibe, just not home, and he wants to come home.
I can tell you this. This is not speculation. I can tell you this with authority. Kaden Proctor experienced some serious backlash from Alabama fans during the season for a slow start to his career. Remember, he's starting as a true freshman. How many tackles are starting at that age? So, in other words, I think it was obvious to Kaden Proctor some of the backlash and flack he got for leaving Iowa from the Iowa fan base. He realized during this past season that that's every fan base. All right. So there's no reason to hold a grudge against the Iowa fan base because they were upset he decommitted and flipped. The other part of this is, I can tell you with confidence, he has been homesick. And he is really good friends with Xavier Wampa. His girlfriend goes to Creighton, which is still quite a drive from Iowa City. But, his parents are in Des Moines. That's an hour and a half from Iowa City. His girlfriend's another 2 hours west of that. And like I said, he's really good friends with Xavier. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know the money. That's one area that I don't have answers to as far as what NIL opportunities were available to him down there. I know they were substantial, right? I mean, we can all assume that they were substantial, but I also know that the Iowa collective is in a better spot now than it was a year ago. And also know, here's the deal, whether we all want to admit it or not, Kaden Proctor jumped in the portal, and this is not me repeating any information I've been given from any select source or anyone specific, but you can't convince me for a second that there was not some communication with someone with Iowa prior to him jumping in the portal. That's happening everywhere. And I'm not saying it's tampering, but if he's best friends with Xavier Wampa, you're telling me Xavier Wampa's not actively recruiting him away from Alabama, after the season? Of course that's going to happen. And so be it. I mean, how can you enforce that? How can you tell a couple of kids not to talk? So, yeah, I think homesick, NIL opportunities are stable here. But I can tell you, it's also not like the narrative out there a year ago when he flipped was that, well, mommy made him. Mommy wanted him to go to Bama and collect the bag. I can't comment on that. I can tell you that Kaden's making a decision this time for Kaden. This is not like, his mom's telling him or one of his parents is telling him to go to Iowa because now the grass is greener over there. This is the decision where I think, I'm not saying he didn't go with his heart before, but I think he's going with his heart now because he feels he misses Iowa. And Iowa, I mean, he committed to Iowa for a reason out of high school. This is kind of where I feel like this is kind of where he wanted to be all along.
Corey,
Yeah.
and don't you think the culture at Iowa family-like, that people are close, and you hear that all the time about all the players coming back to Iowa instead of going to the NFL? There is a culture that's pretty tight, and if you went to school in Iowa City like I did, it's very true. It's 50,000 students when I went there, and there's a certain glue there that's important to some athletes.
When you grow up in the state, I think that's absolutely fair to point out. And people who don't live in Iowa maybe don't understand that, but this kid was, raised in the heart of Iowa. So, yeah, I think there's something to be said for, hometown kid. Even though you may hate the weather and hate certain things about your home state, especially a place like Iowa, it's always going to be home. So a year's a long time for a kid who's only been alive 19 years, and he got thrown into the whirlwind. Didn't look very good against Texas. I think you would agree with that, Mark, but that's a really good Texas front. And so, I mean, as it relates to implications for Iowa, he's going to get here. He's going to play from day one. As long as he stays healthy. Will he be a right tackle or a left tackle? I don't know. I did have a conversation with Don Patterson. It was yesterday, just about what he watched from Kaden, and he certainly didn't watch every game from Kaden Proctor this year. But his only observation is he thinks maybe, he's still early in his career, but he kind of infers that perhaps Kaden's future in the NFL is at right tackle. So, maybe Iowa, runs him there, kind of like they did with Tristan Wirfs, and now Tristan's one of the best right tackles in the league. Don's not real confident that Kaden's a blindside guy, but regardless, it's gonna help immensely. And maybe this convinces Nick Brooks, the other monster kid from Eastern Iowa that decommitted from Iowa a few months ago, 6'8", 370 or something absurd like that. Maybe that convinces him to hop back on. But keep this in mind. Plan on Kaden only being here 2 years. I mean, he's jumping to the league as soon as he is, again, barring something unforeseen. He's jumping to the league as soon as he's eligible.
And that's really what you want, actually. Not that you want your best players to leave, but that's showing that's what the contending teams are facing in droves across college football. So you need to get to that point where that's the culture, and that's what is the process for much of your roster.
And by the way, one more thing from me, Mark, and if you have anything else for me, that's fine. But if for any Iowa fans that are like confounded by the fact that Iowa was like 7 guys over the scholarship limit, I had Tom Kakert of Hawkeye Report on my show yesterday. He brought up something I wasn't aware of. Apparently Nebraska's at like 105 scholarships right now. So they're like 20 over the limit. So this is not a problem unique to Iowa. The COVID stuff has really backed this up. And whether you like it or not, like there are going to be guys that are just told, hey, we'll help you find a landing spot, but you're not playing here. We don't have the playing time for you. And what will happen? Those guys will jump in the portal. Iowa is not going to take a scholarship away, but guys want to play. So they'll get down to 85. And you're certainly not going to say to Kaden Proctor, well, we're already 5 over. I don't think it'd be wise to take you on. I think they'll find a way to make him fit.
See, I thought that after they let all of those COVID restrictions go and let that really just be fluid and very lax for, it's been a few years now, that there was a date set at some point last year that starting this season, that everybody was going to have to be back in line with the 85 scholarship limit.
Yeah, no. Let me clarify. They got to get back down to 85 after spring.
Yeah.
So by fall, that's what I'm saying. Like they're going to move some people in the next few months. And there are guys that might have already said, hey, I'm entering the portal, especially, we got all this news about Jay Higgins and Quinn Schulte and all these guys. We got all this news after the heart of the portal season. So a lot of these guys may have already expressed their intentions, but they can't officially enter until the portal window's back open in April anyways.
And I was talking a few minutes ago about Ohio State gearing up for 2024, and they've had a lot of NFL decisions go their way. Almost all of them go their way, and now they've been active in the portal. And it looks like Iowa, this is fast becoming, with all the NFL decisions again that were in question going their way. Kaden Proctor, like, this is turning into an upsurge for Iowa, maybe making 2024 a little bit more optimistic than it had been.
Yeah, they got to hire an OC next.
Yes.
That's the one that's like, I don't have any answers to anymore. So Lemansky, if you're still on the line, don't ask me about OC because I have no answers.
Oh, come on.
And I saw somebody
Well,
commented,
get to work,
Mark,
Mr.
on
Brad,
your
we depend on you.
Lemansky just said that we depend on you, and I will include myself when it comes to the Hawkeyes.
Well, I don't have answers for that. Like I said, they're probably going to go NFL. It'd be my guess, and you just hope it's the right fit. But no, I mean, what I was going to say is, as it relates to offensive coordinator, and Tim makes a good point about BRIEN, but I do want to make something clear. This OC search, like, Kaden does not. My understanding is that Kaden has not been told, "Hey, this is going to be the OC." Like, he's not coming to Iowa because they've informed him so and so is going to be here. They don't know who's going to be here. Kirk doesn't know who's going to be here, and we may get a decision next week. May get an announcement next week, but it sounds like maybe even a couple of weeks still out, which is odd. But that's what happens when you give a guy a 2+ week window to commit to a job, and then he decides to sit on it and end up not taking the job.
And really anything NFL related at least originates from all the teams that are still in the playoff, or a domino effect from that, which we've seen, of course, and see every offseason in college football. So that pool of talent is shrinking.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, guys like Pete Carmichael just lost their job. I mean, I brought Pete Carmichael up because he and his is it Cody Burns? I can't remember his last name. Wide receivers coach down at New Orleans. Don't know much about him. You probably remember him in college, Mark. You'd have to look him up. But I read that he was a former quarterback, switched to receiver in college, and has been coaching the Saints wide receivers for quite some time. But he and Pete Carmichael just recently lost their jobs. So, that's the type of candidate that maybe wasn't available 3 weeks ago that maybe Kirk could capitalize on.
All right. Lemansky, what else you got for us?
Lemansky, you there?
Okay. I think we lost Lemansky.
Connection kind of went bad.
There we go. Anything else for us, Lemansky? And I think Lemansky's gone. One more time, Lemansky. You with us? All right.
Lemansky's done with you, Mark.
Yeah, well, yes. He got everything he wanted out of you, and then he's done with me. But Lemansky got us started tonight, certainly with the super chat, at least, of letting me know that Iowa and Purdue are playing basketball on Saturday. So I was wondering about that. But yeah, I just have you here for Kaden Proctor in the offensive coordinator spot. So
yeah, I mean, we talked about this on our Iowa show on Tuesday, but Seth Wallace was promoted this week. Phil Parker's making a lot more than he was before, and rightfully so. And that is something we didn't cover Tuesday. That is at least a solid positive indicator that Iowa's in position to pay their next OC probably somewhere in the range of 1.5 to 2 million at the very most. I can't imagine an OC coming in here and making more than Phil Parker right off the bat. But if they got a home run higher, I guess maybe you could sell that.
Yeah, that could be it right there. Corey, appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. We'll try to make this a more regular thing. Again, I apologize for not getting on earlier, but I'm just happy you got this phone line going, and I'm going to still continue to advocate for you to start doing more audio podcasts and bug you to death on it until we get it. So
Audio podcasts, FCS channel, March Madness is in
FCS.
2 months. Yes.
Real quick, let's make it clear. It's not just FCS channel. It's FCS at the Voice of College Football. And wasn't there another one? Like, did we talk about James Madison or something like that, or Old Dominion?
Yeah.
I wanted to see if you could hit one of those really obscure teams and just see what happens. But
let's make my career an experiment.
What about transfer portal at the Voice of College Football?
Oh, I would just sit here and read. Is all I would do. I would just read the 247 Sports transfer portal list. Just, yeah. I think there are YouTube channels out there that in the sports realm, in the college football realm, that do that. Just read a lot of news. We could go to that.
There you go. Well, I'll be posting more stuff to my channel probably later this evening and then tomorrow, and nonstop stuff. So, of course, post-game show tomorrow with Gary Close, and Sunday.
Yes,
I know this will interest Mark. Iowa, the Iowa women, Caitlin Clark has Ohio State sold out in Columbus, so they're going to be on NBC at 11 a.m. on Sunday, and let's see, sold out. And I've got none other than former Hawkeye Allie Disterhoft joining me for post-game coverage. So that should be a fun day.
You will be happy to know that Caitlin Clark made our Ohio State live show this week, because as we were wrapping up, it was mentioned by someone, and therefore I was informed on the Caitlin Clark appearance at Ohio State in Columbus coming up on Sunday.
Well, given the fact that your Ohio State football guys said that to you, that does surprise me a little bit. But
well, he's a big basketball guy. He's a big basketball guy too. And I will be looking out to see how much that impacts the NFL playoff ratings.
Are you being sarcastic? You
Yes,
little jerk.
You know me well enough.
Well, hey, NBC, Mark, NBC. Not because of chumps.
Well, what we learned at ESPN is live programming, regardless of what it is, putt golf, whatever it might be, the X Games, the hatchet throwing, whatever it is always the route to go.
There's never hatchet throwing on NBC. All right. They're not playing bags. All right. that's not it. So, but I get you.
No, I do want to highlight that for everyone, that Corey's going to be live after the women's game, of course, on Sunday, and then after the men's game on Saturday. And again, we'll have more content concerning the Kaden Proctor situation. And of course, if there's an offensive coordinator, which we had indication from Kirk here recently that this was coming soon. I think he used those exact words. We will hire someone soon. Whatever that means.
Well, I think Kirk, honestly, I think this is just my rant here as I see Lemansky with another super chat. But can I honestly say this? I think Kirk thought Paul Chris did a good job. That's not from what anybody's told me, but he was offered the job. I can tell you that. So I think Kirk just thought he was going to take it. And Paul Chris just got paid reportedly like $11 million to leave Wisconsin, so he can pick and choose his next job carefully, and I think that's kind of what he's done.
Absolutely, Corey. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Yep, we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Mark.
Always good to hear from you. Have a good night. The one and only Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and again. Two big stories on the Iowa football front. Caden Proctor, 5-star. There aren't many 5-stars that come out of the state of Iowa. Xavier Wampa, their up and coming safety, would be another one in recent years. I'm trying to think. You would have to otherwise go back to, shoot, I can't think of the defensive end. His name's on the tip of my tongue from about 5 years ago. He would be their last. But you got KADYN Proctor, and seemingly coming back to Iowa. That would be huge for the Hawkeyes as they try to compete, especially on that side of the ball, in this new and improved Big Ten that is going to be so fascinating to watch this year. And again, Corey's got the basketball covered for you this weekend as well. We will get to the super chats. And at some point here in the offseason, Tim and I are going to dive into kind of that dynamic that we're looking forward to see. I know both of us are, in terms of the 4 new teams and what they're going to look like against the old guard in the Big Ten. Lemansky, thank you so much for the 10 spot. Beth Getz has been designated permanent AD. She made it possible to attempt a renovation of the offense. Yes. Interim AD. I don't want to cite the school she was coming in from. I believe it was Ball State. I'm almost positive it was Ball State, interim AD. And she took it upon herself, and she was very upfront. What I found refreshing was, in a very polite and respectful way, she was still very blunt to kind of say, if you really got it amongst the politically correct, very professional language, that she saw that Brian Ferentz contract and was like, what the hell is this? Who put this together? Why are we making this public? This is insane. Why are we telling our fans we've given an opportunity for a bonus to an offensive coordinator to do a horrible job, and we're still going to give him a bonus, and we're making this all public to you, and these metrics are laughable? That's pretty much what she said in a very professional way. And he didn't live up to that criteria, and she fired him after whatever it was, 9 or 10 games. It was with about 2 or 3 weeks left in the season. Of course, he stayed on through the rest of the season. And so, yes, kudos to her. And she took the Bulls by the horn for sure. Nick, thank you so much for being here. The NCAA should sanction Iowa for their offense. Yes. Tim, do we have a call?
I hope so. We might still be there. We've lost a couple.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Caller, you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Hello?
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Whoa.
Yes. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
Caller, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm hearing a lot of background noise, but actually, well, so let me ask 4 questions. Four questions for you about the new Big Ten. Excited. Hello?
Yeah, hi. First off, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Charlie from Chicago.
Thanks, Charlie. And what's your first question?
Okay, the first question is the 4 new teams that's coming in. Excited about it. A lot of narrative about how a pass-heavy team won't win the Big Ten, other than Ohio State, and just wanted to see what your thoughts on it, Tim, since USC is coming in, one of the 4 that's coming in.
Okay.
The second question.
Well, Charlie, let's grab that first one first. Let's start there and then hold it. So I think you just answered your own question. I think the proofs, it's proof of concept. You see what Ohio State has done with an effective passing attack in the conference. It can be done. A matter of fact, it can be done because let's look at their record over the past. What, Mark? When did Ohio State go to this high-powered passing attack? What would you say? How far you have to go back for that?
Well, to this extent, Dwayne Haskins, 2017 or 2018, if you want to take it to that level. But they obviously had all sorts of NFL wide receivers on the team all the time. But in terms of this conversion to this type of offense, it was Ryan Day being the OC and Dwayne Haskins, 2018.
Yeah, so that's my thoughts on it. I think that you can even this could be great because now the age old debate between are the Pac-12 defenses that crap, or are the offenses in the Big Ten that crap? What something's gonna have to give this year, and we're gonna see
Correct.
with Washington. Well, Washington's gonna be taking some steps back. It would have been interesting if Washington could have come with the board and really healthy at their passing attack. And then we know that Oregon's going to open it up. Chip Kelly's gone more to really just a run game, especially with the quarterbacks he's had. He's been running the ball a lot more. And then USC obviously is going to throw the ball a lot. So we will see. This is where the rubber meets the road. We'll see this year if these passing attacks can make it in the Big Ten.
Exactly. And then there's been a narrative out there saying that the Big Ten defenses have been statistically much better because the Big Ten offenses haven't been that great. But in the playoffs, in the national championship, you saw a really good Michigan defense going against the top teams. So I'll be curious to see how the Big Ten, the traditional Big Ten defenses fare with the new teams coming in.
So we're fortunately, Charlie, going to get a ton of games. So we're going to get 4 teams coming into the league playing 9 league games. We're going to have 36 opportunities to say, okay, what does this look like? And you know what we're going to get? Mixed results. I guarantee it. Now, does it lean more toward, okay, these Pac offenses are really good and these Big Ten defenses they're really good, but they're giving way, or, the stats are going to lean one way or the other, but people are going to be out there cherry picking the old guard of the Big Ten that wants to say, hey, yeah, we're going to put them in their place and they're going to have to earn their stripes and all that, are going to cherry pick the Iowa game where they hold Oregon to 13 points and they win, 17-13 and pull off that upset. And then your Pac-12 defenders are going to cherry pick USC going into Minnesota, putting up 45 points and making them look silly, and you're going to see both, and we're going to be here to try to do our best to measure it accurately. But as Tim says, it would have been so fun to see these current 2023 Pac-12 passing attacks. So I'm going to stick up for the Pac-12 on one hand, but I'm also going to also highlight that this has been a recent surge. You've had Bo Nix come in from Auburn, Caleb Williams, Oklahoma, Michael Penix from Indiana. You've had some of the best quarterbacks come in as transfers into this conference and some of the best coaching. And it's been these coach-quarterback combinations that have really taken the league by storm and just elevated the play considerably. Not that other adjustments haven't been made and there haven't been other upgrades. Football is not a one-man game. But I think that's been a large part of it. Now, unfortunately, sure, Dylan Gabriel is a good quarterback. Miller Moss showed us a lot, and he was a 4-star. And I'm sure Lincoln Riley is not going to throw him out there if he's not ready to go. But we're not going to see Caleb Williams against the Big Ten, Bo Nix, Michael Penix against the Big Ten, unfortunately.
But again, the West Coast teams have always West Coast are where all the quarterbacks come from. I mean,
yes.
A majority of them come from. And even before Lincoln Riley got there, USC's been known for its passing attack and quarterbacks and wide receivers. And Oregon, same thing, them as well. It's just now recently, it just seems like the coaching got really bad for a while. It really did. You look at Oregon, they made some bad coaching hires. Washington made a really bad with Lake, made a really bad hire. SC with Helton, and the Chip Kelly's been mediocre, just been mid. He hasn't been the Chip Kelly from the Blur and the Duck teams that he put together and were challenging for national championships. So it's going to be interesting to see. Jed Fish, you guys, everyone's sleeping on Jed Fish. Jed Fish might go up to Washington and surprise everybody because that Arizona team that he brought that team with like a winless, one win team, and he brought them to almost the top 10. And they were going to probably be a preseason top 10 with him as head coach. So let's not sleep on Washington either, but it might take him a couple of years to get moving, but we'll see with the portal.
Yeah. My second question is to add on to what Mark was saying. Let's say that the 2023 season played out with the 4 teams in it. Michigan number 1, Ohio State number 2, and then I would say number 3 team was Penn State. With the 4 teams coming in, how many of them would have been ahead of Penn State?
Probably 2 of them.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, Washington and Oregon probably.
Probably. Those would have been great games.
What do you
Penn
think about
State
USC?
USC had severe problems on the right side of our offensive line, and the defense was terrible. So no.
Okay. Third question is just Michigan. Just assuming Harbaugh goes up to the NFL and Moore gets a head coaching job, is there any intel on who might be the OC for Michigan if that happens?
I don't really have anything there, unless I got to say that maybe I should have been listening better. We had a conversation with Nelson Hubble that we posted yesterday. Maize and Blue review. It's a really good 25 minutes on Michigan football, and I tried to cover all of that, considering the Harbaugh situation, what they're going to have to do at quarterback, losing like 22 pretty prominent players, and what's that going to look like, and all that. And he laid out a contingency plan, and I'm trying to think what he stated about if Sharon Moore would take over as head coach. I don't have a. I know that now that it comes to mind, Jason Candle, the Toledo head coach, I've heard that name thrown out there.
Mm-hmm. Great. My final question is, I'm a Purdue fan and wanted to ask Tim about Graham Harrell, since he's our offensive coordinator. I know that Purdue had a rough season last year, but wanted to get your insight on what Harrell's good at, what he's not good at. What's your thoughts on him as an OC?
It's really hard to say, because he came into a very dysfunctional organization. Yeah, it's a young OC coming in to what had become the Clay Helton, bottom of the Clay Helton era. A lot of dysfunction. There were not a lot. We talked about earlier. Mark and I were talking about the offensive line was just kind of in shambles. For a while there, actually, his first year as the OC, they had, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, but the previous offensive line coach came from Michigan. Come on, Wolverine fans, you know who his name is. It's on the tip of my tongue. We went through some of the offensive line coaches.
Did they brought in Warner?
No, they brought in Clay. They brought in Clay McGuire, who coached in the Leach Tree. Finally brought in somebody that would be compatible with Graham Harrell's offense. And the problem was, when you're trying to do air raid concepts, but you don't have an air raid offensive line coach, it was just a mess. My best answer I can say to you is Graham Harrell came into a really shitty situation. And so Tim Drevno. So the short answer is that I don't really know how good of offensive coordinator he is, just simply because he came in. You have Helton trying to run elements of his offense, overseeing a lot of this stuff. I don't know how much that was Graham Harrell. I don't know how much of it was just the dysfunction itself. I can tell you he came in with a lot of braggadocio, talking about we're going to put up 55 points a game and this and that. That never obviously materialized. But I think that you guys hopefully we'll see his ability. I just don't think at SC, as messed up as the USC situation was in the latter years of Clay Helton, that anything coming through that program at that moment was going to be a fair indication of what that person can do, including players.
Yeah. I mean, and then just curious about how this air raid system, how long it takes to implement, because I know Longo also came in and they both didn't have the offenses that they wanted this year. So where when Riley came in, it was already an air raid system that he took over. So be curious to see how it all looks in year 2.
Well, the benefit that Riley has is remember, he brought Caleb Williams in as well. So then you have the quarterback who knows your system. You have a Mario Williams who knows your system, right? So he can. So now you have 2 coaches on the field, including the coaches, but you've got actual players with Caleb had a year of experience with him, and Mario Williams had been there as well. So they were able to be the coaches on the field. And I think the principles on the offense were simple enough. The route trees and everything. I think that everyone picked up fairly fast because you're bringing in new players also. Brendan Rice coming in and Jordan Addison. So everyone's really new to the fix. But the main thing was there was continuity. It's a great thing to have your quarterback come with you to install your offense because he already knows it.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate
Thanks,
you being
Charlie.
here, man.
All right. Good night.
Interesting comment that was made in the chat, asking the rest of the chat. I'm not going to pull it up because I've lost track of it, but basically whether Jonathan Smith, who of course took the Michigan State job, is kicking himself since he was at Oregon State's done an excellent job, was a hot commodity. And with the situation of Oregon State most likely losing its Power 5 status, he takes the Michigan State job, and then Washington comes open. And would he have rather stayed in that part of the country? Now, I know less about the northwest corner of the country than any other portion of the country. I've been everywhere pretty much except the northwest corner of the country. So staying in the northwest corner, but being 12 hours away or whatever it is from Corvallis, Oregon to Seattle, and those are being 2 completely, from what I understand, types of places to live. I don't know that it would have much mattered from that standpoint, but you would have to evaluate Washington as a much better job at this point than Michigan State, although historically and in terms of their ceilings, it's somewhat comparable, but certainly Washington has been a better program by and large over the last few decades.
All right, Mark, we have joining us, we have Michigan Man from Michigan. Go ahead, you're on with Mark.
What's up, Mark? How you doing, man?
There he is, Michigan Man. What's going on?
That's another day, man. I got a question, man. So I'm not too familiar with the show cause rules, but let's say Jim Harbaugh, how he's asking for this immunity.
Yes.
Let's say he signs his contract, right? Let's say they agree to the immunity. What happens if the NCAA, let's say they gave him a 6-year show cause? How does that affect the program? Even though they, in the contract they agreed to immunity. Are they still penalized in some way? Like, how does that work?
I don't know how it works because I don't know that we've come across this situation before. So I don't know how it would be applied. That is a great question. I wish I had a better answer for you.
This is because I'm with you. And the reason I'm asking this is because I disagree with a good portion of Michigan fans on this. Because look, Jim Harbaugh got us a national championship, all these things, right? But I 100% believe that his constant flirtation with the NFL, his high demands when it comes to contract clauses, like you see right now, I think it's hurting recruiting personally. And the past 3 years have been great, and I hope it continues that way. I hope that, the development is the way it's been. But it sucks that we can't take this national championship momentum and really capitalize on it. You see where I'm coming from?
From a recruiting standpoint, you're not. And you haven't before from the...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, and I've been somewhat surprised. So you're running into Michigan fans who are saying, we need this guy to stay. He's what lifted us to a national championship. I've been actually surprised that I've encountered Michigan fans who are in your camp that say, you know what, we're thankful and it's great and we got what we wanted, but we got to go through this every year. And the way things are trending, we can't continue to recruit in the low teens and compete. Although it could be argued that recruiting ranking means less today than it ever has, and that you can make up ground in the transfer portal. And that's, of course, exactly what Michigan has done under Harbaugh.
Oh, yeah. And, my main disagreement with Michigan fans is more along the lines of who deserves the blame for the recruiting problems. A lot of people want to put it on Ward and the Michigan athletic department for not just agreeing to every single term and thinking that, all the blame is on NIL, which some of it is. But I honestly think that if you go in a recruit's room and a recruit doesn't know if their head coach is going to be there next year or the year after that, I think that's just as big as NIL, in my opinion. Like kids probably want to have some security when it comes to knowing if the guy that they're committing to is going to be there for the entirety of their commitment.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, well, shoot, what was Harbaugh's big statement at this time last year? It was something like, I am not, I wish I could, it was some kind of
It was,
ironclad guarantee.
he's like, yeah,
Go ahead.
It was pretty much, he said, I'm done. He said, I'm done entertaining the NFL pretty much.
Yes.
And then he interviewed.
Here we are the next year.
Then he interviewed anyway. Yeah, exactly. And look, man, it's just frustrating. Now, honestly, I get why the school wouldn't grant this immunity thing.
Yeah.
Because there's just too many question marks. Like the question I gave you at the beginning of the call, like they've got to be thinking that too. Like if we grant him immunity and they give him a show cause, like what are we liable for? And
Yes.
is he even going to be able to coach? Like all these different things. And I don't think it's as simple as just granting everything that he's asking for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It raises the question how much is still unknown about this investigation. And, I, for one, would have to say that when Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, made the statement that he did, that understandably, most Michigan fans thought, well, we're going to get our slap on the wrist and we're not going to have to be fearful of vacated wins and a large probation or anything like that. But and so maybe what he's asking is not that out of bounds.
I agree, and I don't think they are going to give heavy punishments, but that's not the world we live in. Like, it's all about being prepared for every outcome. And again, when they may have said that, but you don't know what the punishment's going to be. You don't know what they might do, or you don't even know if the investigation is 100% complete. But that's enough with that, man. How do you feel about the Bill O'Brien hire?
Well, I'm not going to sell Bill O'Brien as the best offensive play caller in football or anything like that. But I think that in this day and age, and we were having this conversation about a half hour ago, that in this day and age, the great majority of head coaches cannot handle one side of the football and be effective at that large of a place. And I think Ryan Day needs to have a huge impact on the offense because he's that good. But as long as Bill O'Brien is running Ryan Day's offense and they come to an agreement on that he's not a freelancer or going to build his own offense, I'm sure he's going to have plenty of suggestions, and he should. He's that good and he's that accomplished and experienced. But Ryan Day's going to provide the offense that Bill O'Brien's going to execute, I think, on game day. And this is going to allow Ryan Day to focus on being a head coach during the week, but also going to allow him to be a better game manager because he's not been any kind of a James Franklin or Les Miles on the sideline. But has he been at his sharpest on the sideline in all of these critical game management kind of situations? No, there's been a hole or two in his game.
And Mark, it's not all about just the game day decision making on the side. It's also the game prep the week before. There's all things that go into the offense. Yeah. If he's able to rely a little more on, a seasoned, an older offensive coordinator. I know Hartline was brought up young, hot coach, but he doesn't have that kind of experience. I think you probably feel a lot more comfortable turning over those aspects to installing, for the week, what they're going to do, the game plan, than handing over to Brian Hartline. I think he could work, like you're saying, on other things, even recruiting, etc., throughout the week, throughout the year. So there's a lot to adding a Bill O'Brien, especially again with that run with Judkins and with Henderson coming. I'm starting to see. I remember seeing Saquon Barkley run in that offense, and I think you guys are in for some fun if they can get some of that stuff going.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. It's gonna be interesting, man, because is it gonna be like when Ed, or who was it? Who was offensive coordinator in 2021, 2022? Technically, I know it was Ryan Day, but who actually had the title?
Why am I blanking? Who did have the title, and who would have moved on after?
It's blanking me too, right now. I know it was somebody.
If I can remember where they went, then I'm going to remember who it was. So Ralph in the chat is saying Kevin Wilson.
Well,
Kevin Wilson.
Yeah,
he got the job at Tulsa. Yeah, I guess it was Kevin Wilson. I was thinking he was earlier than that. So he left Indiana when Tom
my
Allen.
Question is
okay. Anyway, Kevin Wilson.
Yeah, so my question is it going to be just another one of those situations? I don't think it is, because I think Bill O'Brien has some ego to him, and he's going to want to actually call the plays and have influence on the offense. I'm just curious to see if Ryan Day can handle that. He hasn't had to do that yet. And if it's not going the way he wants it to, is he going to be able to have the patience to let it, develop throughout the season? That's what I'm curious to see.
Oh, I think Ryan Day showed, I don't know if it was patience, but he endured a season on offense that didn't go the way he's used to it going. So he's experienced some of that already, and he should realize that the play caller can only do so much. So hey, you got to have confidence in who you hired. Now, how much did Ryan Day have to do with that hiring? It probably 3/4 to 90% of it. I got to think so.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Not that it was forced on him.
100%.
So if those two guys don't go into this knowing how this relationship's going to work, then they didn't do their due diligence.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. I think they should be favored to win, unfortunately for me as a Michigan fan. I think they should be favored to win the Big this year, just if you look at everything they got coming back and all that. It's a make or break year for Ryan Day, man. Point blank period. He got to win this year. He got to at least make the playoff. He got to at least make the playoff. If he doesn't win that Michigan game,
Mark, that's a good point. That's a good point, Mark. If he doesn't make the playoffs this year with all this returning personnel, just if, let's say Oregon's hot as hell. Let's just say, the Dylan Gabriel comes in for whatever reason, and wham, they don't miss a beat, just like Nix was there. And let's just say that Jed Fish gets in there and works some miracle, pulls Julian Sayin from I'm just saying. And then you have, Penn State just has this season from out of the blue in Michigan, and they don't make the playoffs, right? So Ohio State close, but doesn't make it. Now, what's the situation with the head coach? Would that be a situation where it would be okay? Now, is this the guy to lead Ohio State?
Okay, well, let's first set the stage this way. Do we all realize when the last time Ohio State would have missed, other than Luke Fickell, would have missed a 12-team playoff? Do you know when?
I don't know, because Ryan Day hasn't been there that long, so I don't know. 2004.
If there would have been a 12-team playoff the last 20 years, Ohio State would have been there every year.
Right, but like I said, a lot has changed this year. In the past, it's been a lot.
I guess let me rephrase it. Let's say he loses to Michigan, makes the playoffs, but gets bounced in the first round.
How about okay. That? That's not going to be acceptable. Now, whether he gets fired, I don't know. So let's say they go 11-2. They lost in the first round of the playoffs. Oh man, it's not going to be pretty. Making the playoffs is not going to be an Ohio State standard once it expands to 12. And they're going to have to make deep, runs in the playoffs for that to be accepted. So you're asking me if he's going to get fired?
Yeah, and do you guys? I don't.
Yeah, he could get
tough,
fired
man,
for
but-
losing in the first round of the playoffs, just like a NFL head coach can get fired for losing in the first round of the playoffs.
'Cause
Sure, I could
there's-
see that
'cause,
at Ohio State.
compared to like Michigan, for example, don't they have an easier schedule this year? I guess they got Oregon and Penn State, but outside of that, wouldn't you say they have an easier schedule compared to some other Big Ten teams?
Yes.
What do you think is the hardest game on there? You think it's still Michigan, even though Michigan, we don't even know what they're going to be? Probably maybe Penn State, actually. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I don't have it in front of me. I forget where the Oregon game is. I think they've got to go to Autzen. I believe. So it's, give me 2 seconds. It's probably still the Michigan game, but they're at home. Again, if they've got to go to Autzen, I would edge that out as it's not as important, to Ohio State, to the fans. Okay, they go to Oregon mid-October, and they go to Penn State early November, and Michigan. Those are by far the three most difficult games on paper. But I think, I would lean Oregon slightly over the Michigan game, slightly. Yeah, if they lose those two games and then they get tripped up, man, they got to go to Happy Valley, or they've got Iowa. They could lose 3 games and miss the playoffs. Sure. Then he's probably out of a job. Still there, Michigan man? All righty. Appreciate Michigan man being here. And as Tim has just posted, looky there. Caleb Downs, one of the best safeties in the country, per on 3, has committed to Ohio State.
The rich get richer. Knowles will be very happy.
Wow.
Yes. You guys had I think I heard you say on your show that you guys had the number 1 pass defense in the country. Was that your show?
Yes.
Your Buckeye show? Number 1 pass defense in the country. There aren't many players, if you get him as a lockdown corner or a safety, that could actually take away a weapon on the other side. And every one of those guys you take away, limit the offense, make them one-dimensional. And if they're able to do that, it's going to make that defense a lot harder to attack. An already difficult defense to attack.
Yeah, this guy is also a run enforcer. He had 107 tackles at safety. Let me double check that. That number's in my head. Did I see that right?
Well, he's in the box a lot. Yeah, well,
that's a crazy number of tackles for a non-linebacker.
Box safety.
Yeah, so I really didn't. I gave this a chance because I knew that Ryan Day and Jim Knowles and their defensive backs coach Tim Walton were headed to just outside of Atlanta here in the last couple of days to conduct an in-home visit. So they were going for it, but I would have put my money on, I guess, Georgia. Georgia, I heard 2 sides of this story with Georgia. One was he was really close with Kirby Smart. Everything was good, but there was some type of miscommunication late in the recruiting process, and he chose Bama. But he still, that had been smoothed over, and Georgia was the odds-on favorite. And then from other people that was still, I don't want to call it a bad blood situation. That would be a little extreme, but still some hurt feelings over whatever happened in the recruiting process. So Caleb Downs is apparently coming to Columbus. Wow. Okay.
Speaking of which, I'm not going to Columbus, but I'm leaving. I got to go make the USC game, a USC show in 4 minutes.
Oh, yes. So I'm going to wrap it up here, but we'll stay on for just a minute. Yes. So you guys are getting it together here. Yes, it is 9 o'clock Eastern and 6 Pacific. So jump on over to the USC show on the USC channel. Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely. See you, Mark.
Appreciate you being here. I did want to hit on one thing in addition to Caleb Downs. And that is, I thought this was funny. And hopefully our friends over at Blue by 90, I think they're good with this. But is that in the shot? Yes. So this kind of plays into the Caleb Downs situation here. Blue by 90. So our buddy Tanner Wooten joins us on a regular basis from Blue by 90. And also Justin Rowe has been good to us through the years. So we're in a good relationship with the folks there at Blue by 90 who are heavily involved in NIL. But we had a fun exchange here where Blue by 90 posted, in response to the Ohio State hiring of head coach Bill O'Brien as the school's new offensive coordinator, that between NIL and coaches, how much money is Ohio State spending this year just to try to beat Michigan? Ryan Day is scared shitless of losing again. Okay. Be curious to get a response from the chat on this one. If I'm looking at this correctly, Ralph said that he posted on that one as well. So my response to this was basically that, if you're using that logic after losing 3 games to Michigan, well, Harbaugh, he must have been beyond scared shitless after losing 5 straight. And the run that Harbaugh had his first 5 seasons wasn't anywhere close to Ryan Day's first 5 seasons. And he had his salary slashed in half and had to completely revamp his staff. Now, he did a remarkable job and all worked out well. But if we rewind to 3 years or after the 5th season of Jim Harbaugh in 2019, that's what we're looking at. And then the counter was, Harbaugh did not buy his team in the portal, though. He built it with culture. Okay. Well, that also happened mostly during a different, the closing of the last era of college football prior to transfer portal and just the outset of the transfer portal, where I stated we are still a long ways away from Ohio State buying a team. And even with this Caleb Downs purchase, we will say this acquisition of Caleb Downs, the roster is loaded with blue chippers signed right out of high school. So this is not Colorado outside of the quarterback, the running back, and now a safety. And they've got a starting corner in Davison Igbinosun that Ohio State, they have built an elite roster through high school recruiting. The Michigan transfer portal is, of course, Michigan has been much more successful in the transfer portal than Ohio State. And I think Michigan has a national championship right now because of the transfer portal, to their credit. So then Blue by 90 came back with, Mark, I know more about NIL than anyone out there. Ohio State is offering gigantic money for recruits, portal players, and players to stay. Okay. Yes, they do know NIL. I'm not a big NIL guy. I understand what's going on. I understand how it works. I understand it well enough. I certainly know what it was supposed to be and what it is. Those are 2 different things. So I acknowledged, yes, the NIL situation, how it functions. So that is how the system now works. You also know that Ohio State was able to sustain the best winning percentage in the nation under the old system. So it's not like they were failing And then now they've got NIL and they're throwing tons of money at athletes. Well, they were operating at an elite pace before. So it's not like they are this fledgling program that just needed to throw money at everyone to compete. So to be fair, we'll read Blue by 90's final comment, which is their point is that they are doubling what they've spent in the past few years to try to beat Michigan. To win the Big Ten championship, to win the national championship. Yes, all that goes together. Just like Michigan had to make a concerted effort to beat Ohio State after losing to them a zillion times in a row, that Jim Harbaugh stated, hey, we're focused on beating Ohio State. The Jim Harbaugh mantra each year is beat Michigan State, beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten championship. And we'll see if this does. So this final comment, I totally get it, where he says, but to me, it seems as though they're throwing money at the problem to try to fix it instead of building the culture from within. Still, again, 90% of the roster is built from within. To be fair, I have no idea what is happening inside those walls to build the culture. This is just my perception. Yeah, and I get that. Michigan has a better culture than Ohio State does. Michigan currently has a better culture than Michigan, or Michigan better than Ohio State. However, that doesn't mean Ohio State's culture is bad or is not. That doesn't mean that Ohio State's culture is broken. That just means Michigan's culture has been excellent, special, however you want to phrase it. Brian, this is not a Michigan board. This is from Blue by 90. So again, I want to credit Blue by 90 because they follow me on Twitter. I follow them, and that's Justin Rowe, and that's I don't know who exactly, based on the way it was phrased. I think that was Justin Rowe, who we've had on here for years. Justin's awesome. And also Tanner Wooten. So they're great guys, and they have been. And when Michigan was getting its brains beat in, they were very upfront about, the issues at Michigan. So now we've got issues at Ohio State. And really, wow, everything Michigan's done the last few years has just been phenomenal from the standpoint of Jim Harbaugh being Jim Harbaugh again, and being the coach that built Stanford and the San Francisco 49ers and the first couple of years at Michigan, and making excellent hiring decisions on the coaching staff. Excellent coaching hires on the coaching staff. The transfer portal has been, man, if we went down Michigan's last 2 to 3 years of transfer portal additions, they've been phenomenal. Not that everybody's a superstar, but that's not why you're in the transfer portal. Everybody has filled a role. I don't know that they've had a bust. They picked up a good kicker. They picked up 2 years ago the best center in the country. They have really supplemented their offensive line through the transfer portal, and all those guys have been good. Ladarius Henderson, Drake Nugent, Josh Wallace as a cornerback, really good player. Ernest Hausman's going to continue to be a good player, and I think we're going to see more out of him now that he's going to get more snaps at linebacker. They were able to Michigan's credit, they were able to lure Ernest Hausman, one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten and a all Big Ten freshman from Nebraska, to play less snaps at Michigan, but just sold him on what they're doing, what they're building, and what they have built. And now he's primed to take over with other guys like Michael Barrett and Junior Colson moving on to the NFL. So yes, all credit to Michigan. And to their point, and I'm going to respond to the final comment there, I agree. I don't know if throwing money at it, but I don't think that Ohio State's just throwing money at it, because if you run through their superstars on the roster, other than the last couple editions, they were all recruited and signed. And yes, they were able to bring them back much in the same way that Michigan was able to retain its star players through NIL. And Ohio State's done the same thing with guys like JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Mecca Buka, and others, Travion Henderson, Denzel Burke. So yes, they're getting paid. They're getting their money. But again, Michigan did the same thing. Yeah. Wow. Caleb Downs to Ohio State. Caleb Downs had 70 solo tackles, 107 total tackles, 1 forced fumble, 2 picks, 3 passes defensed. And yeah, he made the again the first play of the game against Michigan that got called back and should have gotten called back, but he was that close to starting the Rose Bowl off with an interception. I can't really recall what kind of game he had in that particular game. Don't remember him really flashing in that particular game, but he has shown up for sure. And again, we're in for big news this weekend, because Kaden Proctor looks like he's going to commit and sign at Iowa. So think about this: we're doing a Big Ten live show. This is a Big Ten show. So throw out your particular team for a second. Just think about the conference as a whole. That just in the last 48 hours, Caleb Downs and Kaden Proctor have been named by 247 Sports as the number 1 and number 2 players in the portal. Not currently, overall, even counting most of the guys that have already signed. All the players in the portal, the top 2 guys, come from Alabama, and they both apparently will be signing with Big Ten teams. Power shifts, SEC, Big Ten. Is that a big deal? 2 players go from Alabama to Iowa and Ohio State. Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Is it going to make the Big Ten better than the SEC just with 2 players? No. But it's a big deal. It is a big deal. We do appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football, and consider that we have a unique platform here that if you own a business, you're involved in a business, or have any kind of connection to a business or a personal brand that you would like to partner with us here at the Voice of College Football, I believe you would be surprised at how we could make things work for you and partner together. So hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, and we can partner together. Also, keep in mind, I know this is a Big Ten show, but we got a Big 12 channel. The link's in the description section. We've got, yes, boo, an SEC channel. The link's in the description section, so check it out. And also, man, our Big Ten shows all week. On Monday, we've got John D'Adamo and the Ocho. On Monday late night, we've got USC Live, the Trojan Conquest show. On Tuesday, we've got Iowa Live. We got Nebraska Live. On Wednesday, we've got Ohio State Live. Sorry, Tuesday night is also Michigan Live. And then we've got an Oregon Live show late night on Tuesday. We have Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Nebraska, USC, Oregon, 2 Big Ten shows. We've got 8 Big Ten shows every week here at the Voice of College Football. 8 of them. So we appreciate you being here. And on your way out, please grab the Amazon link in the description section. Please shop Amazon. Doesn't cost you a penny. Same shopping experience. All of that is exactly the same. Absolutely. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Keep it locked in on your way out. Please subscribe. Only about 50% of you that watch these shows are subscribed. So please subscribe. That way you hit the bell for the notifications. You know when we go live. And also, there it is. You're already on Amazon. You're already there. So give it a shot. Just give it a shot once. Grab the link in the description section and shop on Amazon using that link. It doesn't cost you a penny. Nothing. And it's going to be transparent, completely transparent to you. Gregory, Ralph, Mason, Erica, the Rod Farva, James, and others, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And we will see you soon. We're going to be all over the news as it continues to unfold, transfer portal, coaching, and otherwise. See you next time.